Dude, what's up? I've got an exciting episode for you. This is awesome. I've been waiting to do this interview for a long time, honestly. And today I have my friend on, Josh Tate from the band Helitosis. Josh, thanks for coming on today.
Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it, John.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And it is pronounced halitosis, right? It's like the is that like the it's not a gum disease, right? It's like a
It's
right?
like
Is
really, really bad breath.
yeah, yeah. Which is dude, honestly, that's a really cool name. It's almost like in my opinion, it's almost like a death metal name, like Carcass, like kind of thing. You know what I'm saying? Like
Nice.
that's where did you get that? Like what like how did you come up with that? Like it's like really bad breath, like you're just like raunchy sounding kind of band or whatever. Is that kind of the idea behind it?
Yeah, I mean, I think so partially it's tongue in cheek because like we're very silly natured in the band and I think that a lot of our topic matter is dark. So it kind of is tongue in cheek when it comes to, that old style like typo negative where they're kind of, it's almost picking on metal. Like we're so
Okay.
badass, but at the same time we're named after like you said, a gum disease. It's, halitosis, but it's halitosis. So it adds that element of like to it. And when I was leaving an old band of mine called The Leftovers, that band was coming to an end, and I was trying to come up with a new name, and this name Helitosis just out of nowhere struck me, and I was like, that is the stupidest fucking name. Excuse my French. I don't know if we.
No problem.
And I'm like, that name is horrible. Like I hate it. But I also knew that it was like the name. And I looked it up. There's nobody else running with that. It was just like I knew it was it. And
I hear
even though
you.
I've
Well,
never.
before we dive too deep into that, like, so how did you even first kind of get involved in music or like, or like guitar? Like, how were you even drawn to that as an instrument or music as like an expression for your kind of creative outlet?
I mean, I really, as a young person, latched on to music in a way that I remember a friend when I was in second grade was like, you're more into music than anybody else our age. But and I was in and out of bands in my younger years. In fact, you and I were at a show, oh God, in Putnam back in the day
Oh
in
yeah, it was like 94 or 5 or something like
yeah.
that.
And I remember like there's all these bands locally playing, and I wasn't in one at the time. And I was like, oh, this is so great. I wish I was, in a band that was playing out. But I didn't actually end up playing in a band that kind of went out there and did anything until I was like 27 when I moved
Oh, no
back here.
kidding.
Yeah. And I was singing in that band. That was the Leftovers, and it was punk,
Yeah,
punk rock
yeah, yeah.
stuff. And when I was kind of at a point with that band where I just didn't know where it was going, I decided that I wanted to write my own music and start playing guitar more to it so that I could get a chance to write music that I wanted to write that would give me an opportunity to kind of mess with my vocals more. So,
So you didn't play guitar until like you was 28, 27 or whatever?
I mean, I played it, but I messed around. I didn't take it seriously till that age, no.
Interesting. That's really interesting. So that's like a crazy late bloomer if you think of someone kind of I mean you said you picked it up. It's not like but still like you actually like started, sort of pursuing it, it sounded like in your late
Right.
20s. So
Right.
that's interesting. That's really cool. Because
Yeah.
I imagine you were playing, guitar. I just assumed you were playing kind of guitar when I was, back when we were teenagers or whatever.
Not really. Like I had one and I messed around with it, but it was never anything. Like I didn't write any songs. I
So you
didn't
would
write
have
a song till I was probably like 25.
you would have called yourself more of just a singer then.
Yeah, for
Yeah,
sure.
I see. Okay. So the one thing that I love that you do, and I sort of hope you do this with all of your releases, but that's a ton of pressure. But you have the most interesting take on like album releases because what you did is you tied a book along with like your album that you released. Like that's freaking genius. Like what made you come up with that idea?
So it was kind of I wanted to do something outside of the regular band. I wanted to kind of come at things with a different marketing aspect, and I wanted to also be able to follow my two passions of writing and making music at the same time. So it kind of hit me that like if I write a book and I write an album and they go together, then when I go to play shows, I can sell my book at shows, and that's something that most authors can't do. So, and
Hmm.
it's also it stems from the fact that like I like to read and listen to music at the same time. I was like, well, I'm just going to do something that will give me that opportunity.
Actually, I like that you brought that up because I don't remember what podcast it was. You put a link to it, like it might have been a year ago now or something. But I listened to it and you sort of went a little bit deeper on this topic, and I'd like to maybe go a little bit deeper too. Like you were saying, like growing up, you're like, oh, I was reading like this book, but I'd be playing like Appetite for Destruction in the background. And I was like, wow, that's interesting. Like I never thought like even I mean, I'm totally blind, so like that for me isn't an option like trying to take
Yeah.
into what I'm saying, but I was trying to remember me as a kid when I could see. I was
Hmm.
like, wow, that's an interesting concept, like because it really is. I heard you saying like it's kind of like a movie where you have the music going on in the background. I was like, that's a really interesting concept. And I think you said you would kind of read all kinds of books and listen to different albums with different books, right?
Yeah, and it's I think in the beginning of the first book I have, Literally Horrible, that I mentioned like how those songs are really tied to those narratives now. If I read like a Ray Bradbury song, then there's like Fleetwood Mac or Cinderella will pop up. And vice
Yeah,
versa too. I'll hear the song and I'll think of those stories. And
right.
like I love that magic connection.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So like walk us through kind of like your storyline and kind of like maybe some of the songs, whatever if you want. Like, because again, I think this is like it's really a genius way because you're hitting the fan on two different, I don't want to say wavelengths, but I mean you're coming at them with like the book side of things of the book content, but then you're coming at them with the music tapping like another part of the brain. It's a really, like I said, it's a really interesting way of kind of getting your content through to someone.
Thank you. Yeah, that's what I aim to do. I didn't want to I love being both a writer and in a band and writing music. So it's a nice way to like you said, double impact. I'll actually hold up the CD just because I'm gonna do a shameless plug for the first called Seshing the Trench Mouth, and then the book is called Literally Horrible. They're based off of a serial killer that believes they're supposed to bring about the apocalypse. Um,
Hmm.
so when you were, I'm not sure you were asking, you said to kind of walk
Yeah,
through.
like what, like as a kid growing up, like I don't know. I don't know many people. I mean, I'm sure, I mean, other people must kind of do that same thing, but I literally can't think of anyone that's spoken about like, oh yeah, I love like listening to this while I'm reading a book. You figure usually people just dive into the book and disappear, you know what I mean? They
Hmm,
they don't think of bringing that other element along with them, inside their mind. So,
right.
yeah.
I think I don't know. I like it might go back to like my dad was somebody that read a lot and he loved music. I think there was just music was kind of always going in our household, and I think that reading along to it just became part of the atmosphere maybe.
Hmm.
And you know we had we called it a library, but it's just there's a bedroom that had been converted into a room where we could kind of all the books were in there, and my dad's old school stereo was in there, and you know you it was just like he'd sit in there and have a record on or have a CD on and be reading, and that's kind of how it all came about. And then I think one of the things that hit me was and I mentioned this in the first chapter of that book that when I was reading Moby Dick, and like that was that's a seminal book. It's this big like, oh, I read Moby Dick or whatever. But I had Mastodon's Leviathan, and I was going through a breakup with my wife, and we were on our way to a divorce, and it was just I threw myself into the book, and I'm listening to this album that has a lot of the same overtones,
Mm,
and it was one of those things where I'm like, this is what I love doing, and like it affirmed that that's what I wanted to do, was to I was already on the path of writing this book and creating this album, but it made me go like, okay, I'm on the right path because this is what I love, and you can never go wrong if you're doing what you love,
I hear you, dude. Yeah, especially if you have that itch inside you, like, because nobody else is gonna do what you want to do. You know what I mean? Like, so if you don't do it, no one else is gonna.
Great way.
So
Yeah.
and so then like with like literally horrible, how long did it take you? Like, did you? have like the whole story already thought out in your head, or did you could just kind of have to work it through as you started writing it down, kind of, or like did you finish the book and then write the music, or were you writing the music? Like, how did all that work itself out?
That's a great question, John, honestly. And a fellow writer of mine recently asked me, he said, "Are you an architect or are you an alchemist?" And I was like, "Oh,
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay.
right." So it's like this book was definitely more of an alchemy. It took me a long time, and it really coincided with a lot of what I was going through on a very personal basis of evolution. So
Hmm.
I had these some songs kind of already affixed, and some had been hanging around for, a decade or two. And as I kind of went through it, I knew I wanted it to be roughly kind of about the serial killer Richard Ramirez. Um, I didn't know where it was going to go. I just knew that was going to be my topic. And I had a friend that had passed away, and I wanted something that was going to be kind of an ode to him at the same time.
Hmm.
And I just started cobbling it together, and the songs were kind of together, and I put a band together, and it took a long time to find players that wanted to play like this kind of music, and it took 15 years ultimately to get it all, together and published.
Wow.
Um, but in the end, it was definitely an alchemy thing, and it was kind of like, I'm like, oh, I wrote this chapter about this story, so now I got to write a song to fit it, or I got to make this song that I kind of have already fit it. And but the book and album I'm working on now is much more of the architect. And I knew what it was about. It's basically almost like an autobiography. So I
Hmm.
just wrote down all of my journal entries of 5 years and had already written a couple songs in the past that had gone, like through this period of strife that I went through that,
Hmm.
okay, I already have these. And then I just had to write, another, I don't know, five or six songs or whatever it was. So I've gone about it in both ways, but that first book and album are definitely alchemy. I had to hammer them into place.
That must have been a sense of relief when you finally finished that then. You must have been just like not that you have it hanging over your head, but yeah, I mean, you just have a sense of completion at least finally when, for
Uh,
15 years, I can't imagine.
it was intense, like because there were so many points where I gave up, I did.
Mm,
Oh, but then I
mm.
go back to it. And it really was a huge, the day that we released the album and the book was my birthday, and that was probably one of the greatest days of my life, in all honesty.
I hear you.
So I'm glad you can understand that. And
Yeah, no, dude, I couldn't even. That's a long time, dude, to have
mm,
something kind of brewing inside of you.
yeah,
So that show also shows just the tenacity that you're just like I'm gonna get it done. Like
hell
it
yeah.
might take me 15 years, but and honestly, like part of the podcast too is to like I want people hearing your story to be like encouraged or whatever. So like that kind of leads into that a little bit. It's like you know, being a creator, like being a musician, it's like obviously, you and I aren't musicians because we want to be, zillionaire rock star. You know what I'm
Right.
saying? Like obviously that ship has gone and sailed, right? But it's like, but we still love this output. We still love like the creation part of it and stuff like that. So it's like, to be involved with some, I think you said it during this interview, is like if you love it, then it's this passion of yours, then you just need to do it, right? Then it's the right thing to do. So like just get and you started kind of later playing guitar again, which is an inspiration knowing that because even if you're in your 40s, it's not too late. Pick up a good, if you feel like you have songs or music you want to write, or like the whole point isn't to become rich or whatever. The point is to like create, you know
Right.
so
Right.
like we live in and we were kind of talking about this before the interview. It's like we live in a pretty crazy time where like, instruments are cheap. I mean, if you can buy a computer, you got yourself a recording studio, you know?
Right. It's
And
crazy.
yeah, no, it's I mean, this is the time to to take chances or, to put yourself out there.
Yeah, I think one of the things I always talk about that to me is a gift, I feel is when you get older and I'm almost 50, I'm 48. Um you're able to quantify life. You start to realize how much time you have left, and you
Mm,
realize how quickly things go. And
mm,
that is a gift because it's kind of like one of those, okay, time to go. Get your shit together. Like, what do you want to do? What are you going to do? What is this life about for you? And I think when you're younger, I spent so many years going like, well, what do I want to be? What do I want to be? What do I want to be? But the whole time I was being it. I was following
mm,
passion.
mm,
I just realized, like work a day job, something that, you don't hate, that you can kind of enjoy, that you do well, that pays you enough to survive, and then live the rest of your time as if, you don't have that much time left. And just follow what makes you happy because in the end of the day, you're never gonna really be happy with everything that you can get done. But if you don't get anything done at all that you want to do, that you love to do, then the true regret sits upon your chest.
mm. That's a good way of putting that for sure. Yeah, absolutely. Like, would you have any suggestions to like anyone listening that's like, I don't want to use the word scared. It's not the right word, but like I guess nervous to start playing guitar or whatever it is, piano or even singing, whatever it is. Like, would you have any kind of, suggestions for something, to just kind of get started, other than just do it?
Yeah, I mean, I think one to remember always that failure is important to the process because if you don't fail, you don't know what you did wrong, you don't know, what you did right. And usually a failure is there's a mixture of those two things. And also, I'd say the other thing is that you mentioned, I think before we started that like I have a sound that I try to make a little bit different, but I can't say that I try to make it different. I couldn't make it different if I wanted to. I wish I sounded like Gojira, like I wish I sounded
No,
like,
no, you know what? I'm glad that we found a way to bring this because I did want to bring this up. Like I was telling you before, it was before the interview, I was saying, Josh, what I love about you is like with your guitar playing. And it's funny knowing now like even though you're a guitarist, you're really a singer first. So it's really, I mean not funny in this, but it's just funny knowing that. And so like I could hear, 50 different riffs, but in those 50, there could be a Josh Tate riff, and I'd be able to pick it out the second I heard it because you just have your own style, your own way of interpreting these notes that we've been given, and you're not afraid to just do what is inside of you. That I think that's what it is. I think that's what I'm a little envious about, I guess maybe, or that inspires me is whatever you got in you, you just pull it out, and you don't apologize about it.
I appreciate that. And yeah, it means a lot. Especially, I consider you a very good guitarist, so it means a lot coming from you. And I think that speaks to the point of like what I would tell somebody is like, I don't know how to do anything different. It's not, like when I'm writing a riff, I might go like, well, what's weird? I might like kind of ask myself a question
Mm,
like that.
mm.
But I'm not like,
You're
I'm
not
not,
purposely like, I'm gonna fuck with this chord progression. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
you're not purposely like mindfully doing it. It's just what you produce. Like that's what I mean. Like you're comfortable and unapologetic with what you do.
right. And I
Like
think,
and that's important.
yeah, people need to not worry about failing. They need to worry about like making something that they're happy with.
Absolutely. Like if you're sitting there writing a riff being like, "Oh man, that doesn't sound like Kojira." Well, good. Because
Right.
we already got one and we don't need, you know what I mean? Like
Yep.
like it's like, yeah, don't worry about you don't sound like them, you don't sound like whatever. Good. We don't want that. We want, you. And I guess a part of that then is like, if we're giving people advice or whatever, it's like I guess it kind of is just do it because if you the thing about music, it's that universal language,
Mm,
honestly. Like you could write a riff that someone in Japan hears and they're just gonna start jumping up and down and moshing in their bedroom when they hear one of your songs, right? It's this universal language that speaks to people. So like
right.
if you've got this thing tied up inside of you, regardless of if it's music or not, it could be painting or whatever, but whatever it is that in the creative thing that's inside someone once you produce that, you're gonna connect with someone. It's gonna speak to somebody else out there, you
Right.
know? So like I
Right.
think that's the thing that should encourage people is someone out there is gonna like it. You're gonna speak to other people.
Most definitely. Most definitely. Think I don't think there's anything wrong with that idea either. It's, you know, no matter no matter how weird or twisted or, overly emotional, whatever your statement is, it will connect with somebody else because we're all humans and there's always some fucking weirdo that's gonna get it.
That has the same feelings as you.
Right. Somebody's always gonna get the joke.
Yeah, no, totally. Like, absolutely. Like, yeah, ah, man, I just lost a question I was gonna ask too. Oh, do you know what like the stats are for like your listenership? Like, do you know what like countries people have like listened to your stuff in? Like, is that cool to see? Like for like your stats on like Spotify or whatever?
Yeah, I posted, I think, something on Facebook recently because I was like, oh, we got like a listener in, I can't even remember the name of
Like the
the
country or whatever.
it was in India, but it was like it started with an H. It was like Hapasas or something.
Oh, okay,
And
okay. Oh, so it even points down to like kind of the cities and stuff.
yeah,
Oh wow, I didn't realize that.
you can tell like where your listeners are by city, and I mean, I guess I'm sure there's some places that aren't necessarily cities, or I don't know if
Yeah, yeah.
but yeah, it's pretty cool. And there's we get a lot of Europe. I think Europe is, more of an area that is accepting because I think if you make Steadway, in a place like India or in a Muslim-centered country, there's such a smaller listenership. But I mean, if you
Mm,
get that, like you said, into their ears, like that's a huge,
yeah.
like just
Uh,
in general.
do you have on Spotify, do they know that there's like an accompanying kind of like book along with the album? Is that like, are you able to express that on Spotify in any way?
I think in the bio there might be something because setting it all up was hard, and like I'm continually trying to find a almost like a publisher that will do both because right now I can only, use like CD Baby to put things on streaming platforms and then Book Baby that will,
Oh, right.
and I've tried to talk to them both and be like, "Hey, can you guys collaborate? Can we do something?" But
Yeah, they're like, no,
I'm not
that's
big enough for that.
yeah, they're like, that's not my lane.
Right. So
Yeah.
but I think, usually you can put like some kind of a bio up and I always try to mention it in that like, hey, this is supposed to be perceived as a double, not a double entendre, but a double
Yeah,
S.
yeah. Yeah. Um, with the like how like is it a song per chapter? Like did you work it out so like if you listen to the whole album like you would read the book? Is that like how it is tried to be lined up as?
Yeah, so each song is a chapter and then in the chapters the lyrics are bolded. Um so all of the lyrics are from the chapters and um
Oh, that's cool. So in the book, the lyrics of the songs are bolded within the chapter.
mhm.
That's freaking cool.
Yeah, and there's like I put little samples of the book in the album too,
That's
so
cool
like,
too.
some of the songs have like reading from the chapter, and so in the book those are bolded with italicism.
Oh wow.
And I know that you don't have access to the book in a visual sense, but I do have a really crappy audiobook version that I recorded for a couple friends that I would love to send over to you if you're interested.
Oh yeah, dude, totally. Absolutely.
It's just me reading away with a couple of but
Yeah, no, absolutely. I would love to listen to it 100%. Like I said, the idea of releasing things this way is genius, and I honestly think uh other bands 100% could like adopt this idea. I think it would be genius. You know what I mean? Like, have you ever heard of the band Exhumed?
oh yeah, I've heard of them. I'm not
Dude,
very
yeah, they're playing a show tonight. I can't go to it, but um they would I could see them releasing like a comic book alongside of one of their albums because they kind of like some of their stage show they'll have like chainsaws on stage and like they
nice.
have they have this guy that they call he's in the band, but he's like his name's like Dr. Filth, and like and he like brings some shots up on stage and like they like will cut people and get blood all over you know what I mean? They kind of
Yeah.
it's gory stuff like that. But like so that I could totally see them with like a comic book or something like that they release with their album or something like that. Like I could see, again, other bands kind of doing that. Like I don't know, I think it's a really cool idea, especially for the people, the fans that love like the tangible stuff, the people that
Yeah.
want to buy like the CD or they want the book in their hand, like
Yeah.
your stuff is like perfect for that.
I think Kirk Hammett actually he did a book and an album together.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because
I
it
know he
came,
did. I know he did like I forget what he calls like the track, like soundtrack of my life kind of thing, like
hmm.
that like a completely instrumental album. I know he released that like 6 months ago or something like that.
And I think he released, because I remember like when it was soon after I released mine, or right around that time, he did the same thing. And I was like, man, you biting me,
Yeah, right. It's like, damn
But,
it! Like, I did it first. Yeah, right, dude.
yeah. You know who, well, it's funny. We used to cover the song, the Pina Colada song. It's called Escape by
Oh
Luke.
yeah,
He wrote a book and an album that went together, and you had to listen to the album to find the clues to solve the mystery in the book.
dude, that is cool.
That's brilliant, right?
That's a cool idea too. I mean,
Mhm.
it's even like I feel like there's another story, like another book, like maybe 10 years ago or so, but they like created a website and like you had to like read the book and interact with the website and even like kind of like interact with the internet. They would kind of like utilize other websites sort of unknowingly, with the book. I don't know, it was really fascinating what they did,
That's
but
cool. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. No, it was really now. What we were talking earlier, you said you're gonna have a show coming up. Like it was gonna be only streaming on YouTube, though. Is that right? Like people couldn't actually physically go to it, can they, if they're in the area?
No. Yeah,
Okay.
I think it's at the Salem like it's in Salem. There's a TV studio that they run this show out of
Mass or
at
New Hampshire?
Massachusetts.
Okay.
And it's Ken McIntyre is the one that runs it. He's
That
known as,
name's familiar.
yeah, Sleaze Grinder, he goes by. He's a music,
Okay.
he writes for, I think, Metal Hammer magazine, and he's always had like a running show, and it's changed names. It's done a couple different iterations, but one was Heavy Leather Topless Dance Party or something, and now he's doing this heavy leather metal show. And he had this I think he's on his fourth or fifth episode. So we're supposed to be on there in August.
Okay.
Super excited because we've done a couple of music videos or something, but this is a kind of a new medium for us. So I'm excited for that.
Yeah, no, totally. Um, I'll put a link to that in the show notes if you do have one or whatever, or but
Yeah.
I'll update it at some point. So
Okay.
that way I'll also link to you on Spotify and all that stuff, of course, too. But
Okay.
I totally forgot to ask you this too, though. As a guitar player, like, what do you have for a guitar? Like, do you have any favorite guitars? Do you have a guitar you wish you had? Anything like that?
My favorite is the one I play like probably 90% of the time. Her name is Tawny. She's a Dean Flying V.
Oh, perfect.
I drilled a hole in it and put my pentagram belt buckle in there, and I just that like $300 cheap guitar, but just has always been kind of like my favorite. And I have a Warlock BC Rich. Just bought a Gretsch, a Rat Rod Gretsch
Oh, wow.
last year that the next album is gonna be written on that. And let's see, I have like a cheap SG. I would love like a really nice SG. And then
I want to
I've
get one of those soon, actually.
oh, are you? Yeah.
Yeah.
So nice. Just the style is so quintessential rock music, metal music.
Well, and it's like Frank Zappa's favorite guitar, so I have to get one.
Ah, yeah.
Yeah, he's by far my favorite guitarist slash musician.
He's insane.
So
He
yeah,
was.
no, totally, absolutely. Do you have any like guitars that got away? Do you have any like that you traded or sold? And you're like, "Oh, why did I do that?"
Yeah, it's good. Great question. I did have my my second guitar when I was really young. My grandmother bought me like an Ibanez X series,
Mm.
way more than I really knew what to do with. I just kept doing like dives on it and stuff. But like that was a great guitar, but I pawned it for rent when I was older. I was like,
Dude,
ah,
I hear you.
yeah,
Yep, I hear you, man. I got a few guitars like that where it's like, man, why did I sell that? It's like I should have just lived on the street. I could have like
yeah,
used my case as a pillow or something.
yeah. I'll sell feet pics. I don't care. I gotta throw this out there just because he's my buddy, because he does these great things. But when it comes to guitars, I have a CRC being built right now. It's a friend of mine, Corey Reynolds, and he makes these his own custom guitars from scratch. I mean, he doesn't make the pickups, but all the hardware he buys. But as far as like the bodies and everything, it's from scratch. He does it basically out of his basement, and he does these beautiful, beautiful pieces. And he recently was like, when are we gonna do it? When are we gonna do it? And I was like, all right, pull the trigger. So he's gonna make a V. He's making a V.
Nice.
So I'm
That's
not.
well, I'm gonna have to have him on then too, then I'd love to talk to him about making guitars. That's awesome.
Yeah, he's awesome. He's such a great dude too. Like one of the funniest guys I know, and just genuine human being.
Those are my by far my favorite guitars are Flying V's too. I have two actually left-handed Dave Mustaine Deans, so I
Yeah.
totally am right there with you on the left hand on the Flying V Deans.
Right? They're
You're,
just the action is great.
oh yeah, no, absolutely. That's one of the ones I miss. I had a BC Rich like Flying V. It looks exactly like the Deans. It's just a BC Rich one, but
I,
oh my God, I missed that one too. But yeah, so like a few guitars got away.
yeah,
What
yeah.
what do you use for like an amp and stuff?
I have a Marshall JCM. It's a 50 watt, which is kind of funny because I always thought it was 100 watt, and then like finally a tube blew on it, and I was like, oh,
And you're like, oh, it's not working at all.
right. Yeah. So I use that with like I actually have a cabinet of 10-inch the Marshall cab with
That's
10
cool.
inches. Which I guess, for like stage volume, it kind of works better for PA people, I think, because I can kind of push it, but it's not quite as loud.
Right, yeah, you can crank it up a little bit to get those tubes going.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm definitely, not a rich person, and I have always kind of just I play what I get, I play
I
what
hear
I
you. Well,
and
it
I,
also kind of shapes your sound, you know what I mean? Like
hmm.
your equipment and stuff molds and shapes your sound too.
Yeah, yeah. And just to throw out like some since we're kind of talking about sound and like with recording, one of the things that I like to do when we're recording is I put a shit ton of microphones on the amps, on the speakers, because as long as you're not phasing and you make sure your distance of your microphone from your amp is the same, then you can, use these different microphones to get different kinds of tones.
Oh no, totally.
That album was mixed by a friend of ours, Weird Beard, but the capture was all done in-house at our own. We have a little studio, and that was one of the things is when I brought it to him, I'm like, maybe you could use one of these mics if they're all tracked. And and he played just what we brought him all together, and he's like, "Are you kidding me? This sounds huge." And I right there was like, "Oh, well, that's the key for me." Is like
Yeah.
microphone the heck out of it because you get all the tones, you get
Yeah,
all the
no, totally, totally. I know there's other guys now like that I lean a little more towards the digital ant modeling stuff, but there's guys now
Mhm.
that are like have two completely not completely different guitar tones, but they won't make each of them be the perfect sound, but they set it up in a way where they each complement each other and it just makes the tone way bigger,
Right, right.
So they just do interesting stuff that way.
That's it.
Yeah. I know I can't I'm getting the itch to start recording myself, so hopefully that'll happen sooner than later. So right now I think you said you were working on another book and album then, right?
Yep.
So
Yes.
where are you at with that? Like how when do you think you could possibly be done?
I mean, I would love to be done by the end of this year, but I'm not sure. It takes a while to kind of put
I
everything together.
believe it. Yeah.
The album is probably 80% recorded. I need to still do like a second layer of guitars and vocals, which won't take me too long if I can just sit down and kind of get it done. But I try to pace things because I don't want that to be done like 6 months or a year before the book is, because then it's just sitting there and that is a
Right.
kind of torment.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. No, I get that. Because then
Um,
you're like, man, I got this music that I can't release because I gotta get this book done.
right, right. It's kind of it can be a huge tease. So, but the book is probably, I don't know, maybe 50% there.
Oh, is that why I saw you on Facebook? I think you saw a post recently. You're like, oh, I wrote whatever, like thousands of like words or whatever. I'm like, ugh, I can't do
Yeah.
that.
It's not easy, but the main thing is finding the time. I actually took off like 2 days from work this week so that I could
No
have
kidding.
4 straight days of just writing. So that was cool. It was really nice to kind of bang some stuff out.
I guess that puts pressure on you too. Like, oh man, I'm taking off work to do this. I better get some shit done.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. Buckle down, mofo.
Exactly. No, that's cool. Well, Josh, is there anything else you want to like go over? Anything I didn't cover or anything you want to touch on or
No, I appreciate you taking the time today to talk to me. Like, it does take a lot of work to do this, and it's a joy when anybody shows interest because, crickets is probably the worst thing for musicians and
no,
artists.
totally. And well, like I said, I wanted to have you on too because I love your approach and the point of the interview is to encourage other people. Like it's an interesting idea. Maybe you're listening, you have some idea that like people wouldn't think that's cool, but I'm telling you, you got to just do it. Like Nike, I guess. I kind of hate saying that, but like Josh
Yeah,
was saying, if you love it, you got to do it, and then you just got to keep following it.
I think that's one of the most fascinating things about humans is, we're these curious kind of, curious monkeys in a way, curious Georges. Like we're always pushing the envelope, and sometimes it's dangerous, whether you're making an atom bomb or you know
Yeah.
becoming transgendered. And I don't mean that in any sort of, they're not correlated at all, but just in general, like I think that that's the human mind, is that we always want to like look further, climb higher.
Mm.
That's who we are, and that's why we've survived as a species, is because we adapt to new situations. And that's beautiful. Like we may not be here forever, but while we're here, I think it's that whole, explore as much as you can and don't be afraid of failure.
Yeah, there was this saying that I saw recently, and I was like, man, I have to memorize that, and I didn't. I'm gonna
Mhm.
butcher it, but the punchline I do remember. It's kind of saying like, oh, this is good, this is great, but art is for eternity.
Yes. Yeah.
Like you're like once Josh is gone, this Helitosis book and albums that you released are gonna be here forever.
That's
And so that's the interesting thing about it all.
heck yeah, man.
So well, Josh, dude, thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it. I had a great time with you coming on.
Thanks for having me.
When the album comes out, I'll have you back on and we can talk more about that one for sure.
Awesome. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, everyone, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading, and don't forget to embrace your storm. See ya.